pleasures and count its many tears, while we all sob sorrow with the poor. There's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again no more. It's the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. While we seek mirth and beauty and music light and gay, there are frail forms fainting at the door. Though their voices are silent, their pleading looks will say, oh, hard times come again no more. It's the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. A sigh that is wafted across the troubled wave. It's a wail that is heard upon the shore. 'Tis a dirge that is murmured around the lowly grave. Oh, hard times come again no more. It's the song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again no more. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again no more. Oh, hard times come again no more.
Good morning. Good morning. And happy Diwali. Today is the first day of Diwali. We're going to get started with some singing this morning, and the choir is going to come up here and lead us. We hope you can sing along using your gray hymnal, not the teal one, the gray one. It's number 128 in the gray hymnal, 128. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn number 128. For all that is our life. I think I always knew I was a little bit messed up in the head. See, with me being so quiet and all as a child, they'd look at me in the eye and say, "Oh, don't worry, dear, the Lord gives all." But if the Lord gives all, where is my happiness? They look at me like an outcast just because of the chemical imbalance in my head. Their stares just scream at me, glance at me, like I just didn't pray hard enough. Talk about how the Lord delivers us through storms. Sure, we all have storms in our lives, yet it is me who is drowning in the floodwaters. And sure, you can talk about yours and how Joshua 1:9 is the inspiration for our generation, but may I just ask that you grow up? Yeah, storms will pass, but what needs to be understood is the wreckage it leaves behind. Stop talking to me like I'm a dumb adolescent who keeps getting into problems, because if I'm the dumb teenager, you're the dumb adult who can't keep their nose out of it. Yeah, I couldn't get out of bed for a week. Congratulations. Thanks for pointing out my ghost of humiliation. I think you deserve an award. But what upsets me the most isn't the walk or the sad talk. It's the way you raise your hands at a song about strength and storms, and you act like you're still in it, when in reality, I'm left alone with it. And your convincing words of laziness and self-destruction. I couldn't even look at myself for an entire freaking year. Couldn't look at any of my perfections. Couldn't appreciate my split ends and stretch marks and scars. Couldn't appreciate my beauty or the gorgeous accidents. Couldn't begin to comprehend the amazing purposes. No. Instead, I would just keep at it until my nails broke down into pieces and a scarlet stream begins to flow. You talk about God and how my body is a temple. Holy, holy, holy is he, thine, who could have saved me all of the trouble, but allowed me to suffer instead. Let us take a few moments to remind ourselves of our religious trauma. Give space. Give attention to that which has caused us so much strife. We cannot transmute it if we keep it buried. So, let's remember it, dig it back up, so we can hold it up to the light. Please join me in a quiet moment of reflection and preparation. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am Bradley, your service leader here at Holston Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. We welcome you, old friends and new, young and old, online and in person. You are an essential part of our gathering today. Whether today is your first or your 1000th Sunday with us, we are stronger because of your presence. We are one people of many beliefs, many origins, sexualities, and genders. We are all growing, all learning, all loved. Just as you are welcome here. Today, Michael Woods is back. He will be talking about how we can stop narratives loaded with trauma in order to become more resilient. And this is a huge topic, and he only had 20 minutes. So after the service, he'll be like in this area. So if you want to talk to him, ask him some questions, get some private counseling, whatever, he is here for you, and he is waiting. Please silence your cell phones. Please observe the perfume-free zone. Make sure you look for people's wristbands so that you can respect their distancing needs. We are at low risk now, meaning that masks are optional in the sanctuary for now. It is still important to remember that some people will still want to be distanced, which will be indicated by the color-coded wristbands. And it is especially important to stay home if you are sick. You'll notice that some of the chairs are arranged differently today. That is to accommodate people who want to come up and light their own candles for community candles during the service. You can look at the back of the bulletin for more information on how that will work today. Let us light our chalice. If you know the words, feel free to join me. We work together as a church to transform ourselves, our community, and our world by sharing love, pursuing justice, and seeking wonder. Thank you, Brian. Our special music today shall be performed by our lovely pianist, James. It is a Haydn piano sonata in E-flat major. Joseph Haydn has been known as the father of the symphony. We're hearing a piano thing he did, but his symphonies are really good if you want to look at them. He had a good friendship with Mozart, who dedicated 6 of his works to his beloved friend Haydn. James, is there anything you'd like to say about this piece before you begin?
Sure. This is Haydn's last sonata. It was his most difficult sonata, and although as Bradley just said, Haydn is very well known for his symphonies. If you listen carefully, there are some kind of symphonic elements to this piece. You have grand openings and fluid melodic passages that you could imagine being played in an orchestra. I really hope that you all enjoy this piece.
Well done. With gratitude for a little help from our friends, we bring our joys and sorrows to our community. If you'd like to share a joy or sorrow in person, use these candle cards, which can be located over there by that wooden box. If you'd like to share a joy or concern from a distance, please email minister@hvuuc.org. I have 2 cards and then a personal note. First card, anonymous. Feeling the validation when seeking mental health services, and the case manager calling me by my chosen name and asking what my pronouns are. We need a lot more people like them. Very nice. Another one from Noel. Thankful for a month of safe travel and co-creating 2 very successful events in Wisconsin and Texas, as well as playing with our great grandbaby, Gabby. And I'll speak for myself. My sister got married last Sunday. They are currently having their honeymoon in Curacao, an island north of Venezuela. There were no mistakes, no nervous breakdowns, and I cried in front of 100 people. So it was a good day.
The toast was awesome, by the way.
Thank you, thank you. Your Religious Services Committee has decided that it is time to give people the chance to light their own candles. Here at the candles table, once again, we're trying a few things to help with that to make it flow more smoothly, and there may be more changes to come as we try to adapt this ritual with our community needs. If you want to stay in your seat and raise your hand for a candle, I will still be here to acknowledge you in the way we've been doing since spring. I will acknowledge each of you with the motion of my hand, and then you can sit down or lower your hand after I acknowledge you. And we will light a candle for each of you after the people who have come up to light their own candles are done. If you would like to light your own candle instead, we have removed a row of chairs near the back, and we ask that you use that space to go back and around and to line up to light your candles along this wall. Once you get to the candles, Brian will hand you the lighter, which you will use to light your own candle, and then hand the lighter back to Brian before going back to your seat. We want to make both options available to you, so once Loving Kindness starts playing, you may either raise your hand or stand if you want us to light a candle for you, or you may come up to this table through this route and light a candle for yourself. And we will light our first candle for you who are not in the building, but are ever in our hearts and minds. And we light a final candle for all that remains unspoken in our hearts and minds.
Oh, it's great to be back with you all. The candle I asked Bradley to light was for the veterans that I work with every day. So for some of you who don't know me, I'm a chaplain on inpatient mental health ward at our VA here in Johnson City. So in short, I spend all day long with mentally challenged, substance use dependent, addicted, homeless, suicidal, and homicidal veterans. And I love it. I love it. I spend a lot of my day with a lot of brokenness. And so that one candle represents those veterans. In your program, thank you, Bradley, for all your assistance. There's a passage I'm going to read and go from. And for all those who work in mental health and social services, you may know about the feeling wheel. Okay, so I'll take it by that laugh. You are aware of the feeling wheel. But it's really immensely helpful. And you can do this with any kind of text. And this is what we're going to do. So take a quick look if you're not familiar with it. It's pretty self-explanatory. The things, our emotions, our feelings, they are complicated. And I'm going to read a story from the Gospel of Mark, and I want you to just take note. I want you to just dive into this scene and feel all of the drama. It is a complex story. So I want you to just feel all that is going on. Whether it's the man who's suffering these demons or these mental illness, what it might be, Jesus, the disciples, the townspeople, the swineherds, whoever it is, okay? I want you to just kind of identify, and then I'm going to solicit some short responses, like what did you sense, okay, from the wheel, okay? This is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when he, Jesus, had stepped out of the boat, immediately a man out of the tombs with an unclean spirit met him. He lived among the tombs, and no one could restrain him anymore, even with a chain. For he had often been restrained with shackles and chains, but the chains he wrenched apart, and the shackles he broke into pieces, and no one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always howling and bruising himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and bowed down before him, and he shouted at the top of his voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you, by God, do not torment me." For he had said to him, Jesus had said to him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." He begged him earnestly not to send them out of the country. Now there on the hillside a great herd of swine was feeding, and the unclean spirits begged him, "Send us into the swine, let us enter them." So he gave them permission. And the unclean spirits came out and entered the swine, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and were drowned in the sea. The swineherds ran off and told it in the city and in the country. Then people came to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and saw the demoniac sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, the very man who had the legion, and they were afraid. Those who had seen what had happened to the demoniac and to the swine reported it. Then they began to beg Jesus to leave their neighborhood. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed by demons begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus refused and said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and what mercy God has shown you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed. I'm going to start here. Just raise your hand if you. What popped out at you? What did you feel? What did you enter into and experience? Just raise your hand. Just shout it out.
I felt bad for the pigs.
Okay.
Yeah, I did too.
Okay. Good.
So many of them.
That's right.
I'm so proud.
Could you imagine us being picked up by the local news outlets? From crazed to amazed. Man out of his mind finds his senses and is healed. Or local itinerant preacher decimates local pork economy. Yeah, so good. What else?
Of course, happy for the man. For
Yeah,
relief.
a sense of relief.
Compassion.
Compassion, yeah.
I saw it as a story of freedom,
Yeah,
ego self, the shackles that we keep ourselves in. They
okay,
got rid of it
okay.
and followed, and Jesus empowers him to be able to go out and do as I have done better.
Okay, yeah, that's excellent. You should come up here and actually.
Well, like the townspeople, startled and dismayed, what is this sorcery this Jesus person's practice?
Yeah, that's right. They were fearful. Anything in the center here?
The fact that the name that was chosen by the demons is Legion. I
Yeah,
found that interesting. It's like an army, like Roman soldiers.
that's right. I'm going to come back to that point. Excellent, yeah. How about in the section over here? And you can repeat one. Yeah.
Well, initially I felt torment and then relief, great relief.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
I was a little perplexed why the bad spirits had to get into the poor pigs. I mean, what did they do?
Yeah, and there is no easy answer to that. But I have one that I won't talk about today, but yeah, it's perplexing. So anytime we read something like this, we're never going to be able to capture it all. Just like with each other, we will never be able to capture all of what we are. Yeah,
Annoyed.
annoyed.
Annoyed with the villagers. A great thing happened. Someone who's very, very sick was made well, and the first response is go away.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Anything to do with that?
And some anger that this community was shackling this man and keeping him in a graveyard.
That's right. What we can't control, we chain up, throw in prison even.
I didn't like that Jesus instructed him to go tell about Jesus.
Yeah.
Like an advertisement.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
I was interested that Jesus told him to go home to his friends,
Yeah.
not necessarily his family.
Yeah. Or that could have been maybe an extended family, possibly. Yeah. Yeah.
The trauma that the man experienced when Jesus arrived, like wanting him to not attack him or do anything to him like the other people had.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Excellent. You guys are an easy crowd to kind of draw it out of. Yeah. So we don't know how this man got into this circumstance. So one, it invites a little pause and some humility, right? But when you get through some of this story, you can start to pick up stuff that has a lot of indications of trauma. And if it's not that, then all the violence done to the man to constrain him was traumatic, right? How we try and constrain or control that which we don't understand. His isolation, his living in the tombs, his being laughed at and stigmatized, which we'll talk about, right? So to make sure that, right, just understand a little bit of trauma. I know there are other mental health experts here that are far more knowledgeable, but, right, an individual trauma is an event, series of events, circumstances that are experienced by an individual that are physically and emotionally distressing, harmful, threatening, and they have lasting effects on the person's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social well-being, okay? Shelley Rambo, who is a theologian and writes about trauma and spiritual care and theology, says, right, that we all experience pain and loss and suffering. It's just part of our human experience. And in time, many of us integrate that into our lives, and we continue to find some kind of wholeness. But trauma refers to that experience in which there's a certain stuckness. We can't integrate it, and it causes us to feel isolated or alone or abandoned and hurt and almost kind of continually sort of re-traumatized. I spend most of my day with the veterans that are stuck. They're stuck in that trauma. And it's combat, it's life, it's a whole range of things, okay? So when I talk about the title of this holy disruption and holy resilience, that's what I'm talking about. I want to disrupt, that's my goal on the ward. I want to disrupt their stuckness. I want to break up the narrative of their trauma, the things that they keep repeating. Some of these veterans have been through our ward 35 times. It's just been decades of coming through E2. That's short for our inpatient mental health ward. They go from ours, they go to a long-term treatment plan, they go back home, they go to the streets, they go back out, and then they come back through, and we see them again. Which is good in some ways because I get to know them even more and more, okay? So that's what I meet every day. That stuckness, and at times, people like this poor, suffering man in our story today. It's really hard to see. It's really hard to see someone who comes in and who is so uncontrollable that he needs restrained, or she needs an elixir to just knock them out. Otherwise, they're going to hurt themselves, they're going to hurt me, another provider, they're going to hurt a nurse, another veteran, and this has happened. I want to say, thankfully, on our ward that that's somewhat rare, but we've had these periods where just someone comes in and they're so out of control. It's an awful thing to see someone restrained like that. Okay, so what do we want to do today? So I want to take some key moments from this story, which you've all just heard and have in front of you, and I want to highlight some things that invite us to encounter this person. I'm not saying just meet him. I just say hello, how you doing, and keep walking, but to encounter him and stay with him. And to do so is to disrupt the narrative of his trauma. So Jesus will take an approach here that I think offers us something that offers compassionate mercy, something I think Brad was talking about just a little bit ago. But compassionate mercy that is embodied, it's relational, and it's transcendent. Okay, so trying to come back to those themes. So what I want to say is I'm just going to give you a little bit the before and after, and some of you have already kind of picked up on that, right? So his condition, which I'm kind of connecting to trauma, and you'll see why. But you know, oftentimes we so much talk about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but so little do we talk about PTG, post-traumatic growth. Who have we seen, perhaps in our lives, that have been through some traumatic events, and they come out on the other side, and they've grown, and they're more resilient. So we go from this disruption of this narrative to something that is growth and ordered towards resilience, what I call a holy resilience. So there's a transformation. So the man is roaming, he's running around, he comes, he bows at Jesus' feet, to the end where he's sitting in his right mind. He's sitting at the feet of Jesus, which is a phrase in the scriptures which means that he is someone who is open to learn. In the rabbinic tradition, if you sit at the feet of a teacher, it is because you are there because they have something to offer and something to open your mind to a new way of thinking about the world. In some other versions of this in the Gospels, it just says out front, he is naked. So he's naked, he's kind of running around, he's screaming, he's howling, all this stuff, and then he's clothed. And I want to know who gave him the cloak. Blessed is that man or woman who saw him in that vulnerability and shame, perhaps, in his bruised body, and they clothe him with something. Okay? He is isolated, right? Probably for various reasons, but he is isolated. And instead of remaining like that and keeping him that way, Jesus encounters him. What do we have a tendency to do when we're fearful? The 3 F's. We fight, we flight, or we freeze. He's not having any of it. He's going right to the man. He's drawing close to him, and he wants to encounter him. Now, the first encounter with the man, he's actually fails. Yep, you can say it. Jesus failed. He was kind of trying to kind of coax out this unclean spirit, and it wasn't working. So Jesus takes actually the relational approach. What's your name? Who are you? And the man doesn't give a common name. As Bradley was saying, he says legion. And he uses a term from the Roman imperial language. Remember, the primary traumatizer in this whole scene that is not mentioned is the Roman Empire as it oppresses people. Okay? So he says legion. And what is a legion? Who knows? How many? 6,000. Is 6,000 the most highly trained Roman military persons. This man, it is him against 6,000. He has no chance. There is no chance here. So he's encountered, and he is invited into relationality. So 3 things. He's day and night howling and bruising. He's uncontrollable. He has a lost sense of his self, his worth, his dignity, right? He's overwhelmed by these forces in him. So right, he's howling. He's uncontrolled emotions. It's a sign of a trauma. Or the other. What else sometimes happens to persons that are with trauma? What do they feel? Nothing.
Numb.
Numb. And what do they do when they're numb?
I freeze.
Freeze.
Seek out something to get some kind of a response.
Cutting.
Self-harm.
Self-harm.
To feel something.
To feel something. I'm so isolated and so wounded. I got to do something that makes me feel alive. And we get veterans on our ward that are cutting or harming themselves. And it's not to end their lives, it's just they want to feel something. They're so separated from themselves, okay? So how does this transform? He's in his right mind. He's stable. He's recovered maybe a sense of who he is, his self, his identity. He has maybe some autonomy, which is something that someone mentioned. He comes empowered in some ways. He can feel. He can feel life, the sun, others, compassion. He's now open for connection and relationship and belonging and wholeness. This man, in his circumstances, lacks all sorts of meaning, purpose, and mission. And now, afterwards, he's given some sense of mission. Go back home. Tell your people. Tell how good God's mercy has been to you. And in his trauma, he is the living dead. His home are the tombs, a place of death. To now, healed, somewhat more whole, he's now fully and more fully alive. And there's a great line from one of the early church writers, Irenaeus, that the glory of God is the human person fully alive. And here he is like coming to life. So this narrative has been disrupted by Jesus' encounter and his compassion, his mercy, this embodied engagement, drawing him into relationship and leading him to something that is transcendent. Because there's just forces at work here that are beyond any what individual could do or accomplish. Okay? So what do we want to say? I would say make a few points about this encounter. Right? Most of us probably would have, and if this person came into church here, into this congregation, or we met them downtown at the farmer's market, or in the mall, running around naked, screaming, howling, bruising himself, right? What would be the first thing we do? Call the police, restrain him, right? Get him under control. He is unsafe and I feel unsafe. Okay, so it's natural. So this overcoming this fear, and we tend to see and speak partially. This is about just being human. We don't see it all, right? But the danger of seeing and speaking only partially is where I think some of the issue of stigmatization comes. And we know that still, sadly, in our communities, that mental health is stigmatized. Substance use dependency, stigmatized. Criminals, stigmatized, right? They're all kind of, and what I want to say is that that partial seeing should invite some humility and some curiosity. Jesus makes an attempt to get to know the man, to kind of relate with him, and not simply restrain him, right? He disrupts the narrative, not trying to do what everyone else is doing, stigmatizing, chaining, isolating, but right to engage him in a different way. It's like, this is different. Someone's doing something different with me, and they're not just running away or trying to control me. God, and the person here, Jesus, always sees more. They always see more completely, more than any of us could possibly see, but also invites us to do the same, to see more, okay? Now, there's a very interesting side note. This man, nowhere in the story does it indicate that he was doing violence to anyone else.
Amen.
He was to himself. And yet, the mentally challenged person is the victim of violence, as so often is the case. Very interesting. You just talk about his violence towards himself, but not towards others. So oftentimes, and just say the stigmatization, it's just kind of, it's our way of sort of what we can't control, what we can't explain, we just want to simplify. He's got a demon, or he's got schizophrenia, or she has a bipolar disorder, or she has some other mental illness, right? But that's really kind of to make us feel comfortable and at home, and sort of let us a little bit off the hook of actually really engaging them, okay? So, like on my mental health ward, I meet veterans just every day that are probably dealing with the substance use, right? Anything. It's just heroin and meth, and now often those are used together, right? To numb, to slow down, and then to get to the point where they need to wake up and be protective, so they have to do meth. So it's just like this up and down, up and down, up and down. But my first question when I go into the room, knowing that they're struggling with this, so you're struggling with heroin, right? I mean, it's not a very curious approach. My approach is, who are you? Where are you from? Who are you connected to? What gives you life? What takes life from you? Right? So to get to see the whole of the person. Okay? I love Walter Burkhardt, who was a Jesuit and wrote a number of books on preaching. I love his definition of contemplation. Now, I know that sounds like a very high-ordered kind of prayer thing, but he says contemplation is a long, loving look at the real. I'm going to say it again, a long, loving look at the real. I believe in this story, Jesus is contemplating this man. He is taking a long, loving look at everything that is touching and wounding him and preventing him from having a fuller life. He sees him as the child of God that he is, not as someone who has these mental health challenges. So this man in our story today experiences some deep healing, and I want to say that it is holistic. In the Bible, stories of healing are not just physical, blind, now you see, lame, now you walk, deaf, now you hear. But when someone had such an illness, they were excluded from everything. They were on the margins. Couldn't participate in religious or social life. They were isolated, stigmatized, abandoned. But this man's healing is physical, it is emotional, it's intellectual, it is vocational. He now has purpose and a role in life. It is spiritual and transcendent. Because he realizes he encountered something that was way beyond the normal circumstances. And it is social. He can now participate fully in the life of a person. Let me conclude with a story. I'm kind of running up on my time here. And I'm going to call him Joe. All right, so on our ward at VA, we have it's divided into two sections. One is not for veterans who are maybe not in such distress. They can still engage. The other part of the ward are veterans who are, as we say, committed. They are, 2 certs have been written by doctors that say this person is not safe to himself or herself, not safe for others. They're in such a hard detox that if they were to leave, they are in dangers of harming themselves. There could strokes and all the stuff that could come from hard detoxes from drugs and alcohol. So Joe was committed because he found himself in his basement planning to end his life. Okay? Joe has PTSD and, as I later discovered, moral injury. The thing I talked about last time I was here. He's a combat veteran. He spent 20 years in the Marines, so I say he's a lifer. So he has a career, and he retired back in, say, 2015. And he also informs me that he's gotten addicted to kratom. K-R-A-T-O-M, some of you may know that. It's a little bit of a combination of an opiate and a stimulant. So that little back and forth. He resisted coming to this ward. I don't know. I'm not going to no mental health ward. I'm a Marine. I'll get this figured out, which is very much often the posture of veterans. They just kind of shut down all their emotions. They're going to steel themselves and get through this. So I needed to go visit him because that's my job. I have to see everyone who comes in. And he was making his way from actually the more secure unit to the front one. And I said, "Oh, Joe, Mike Woods, I'm chaplain on the ward." And he's like, like, "Get behind me, Satan," kind of that phrase, just like, "Oh no, chaplain, nah, I don't need anything, I don't need any of that stuff." Now, thanks be to God, there was a nurse who knew that I'm actually a reasonable person, not a religious, maybe nut case. I hate to use that phrase because it's speaking of stigmatization. But anyway, she goes, "Oh, don't worry, chaplain, he's an okay guy." And I said, so he says, "Well, let me see." And so we start walking back to his room. "Where are you from? What branch of service were you in? Who are you connected to? Who's your family? What keeps you occupied in the day?" And when he said, "Well, I kind of live on a farm. I grow a really big garden. As some of you know me, I'm a huge gardener." And I was like, okay, that's my ace in the deck. Because then I could engage him about that farm. "Tell me about it." He starts talking about this famous kind of guru in the organic farming movement called Elliot Coleman. And I was like, I read all his books. I have them on my shelf. Do you see what's happening? Not a man that just tried to hang himself, but a person who has such a huge story and has been through so much trauma in his combat. 3 tours in 4 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. No time to unplug and heal and get a sense of where he's been. He saw so much violence and so much harm and killing. And then he was also under the duress of a commanding officer who told him to do things that he did not agree with. That's the moral injury piece of it, okay? He has a brother who's a preacher. And that's right there was where I got it. Stay away from me, chaplain. Right? Mention the religious trauma, and that's exactly what it is. Because the brother would always come at him, "Get your act cleaned up. Get right with Jesus. Go to church." And yet he felt, like the man in our story, so much maybe interior shame for things that he'd done, things that he was told to do, right? So that he couldn't kind of rectify those. He had another brother who had actually gotten sober and still goes to church, was invited by him, and that was a little bit more of a better circumstance, right? So only after just kind of entering into this man's life and story, to see him holistically, did we talk about the trauma and the moral injury and the soul wounds and all the things that he has gone through. He left our ward and went to the domiciliary for a long-term treatment program. He's back home. He's back in his garden, which, as we know, is a great way to foster resilience and holistic care. It touches on everything in our lives. He's with his wife again because things had fallen apart. She couldn't take it anymore. His explosiveness, the drug use, the suicidality, his kids working out of college. It was the motivator, one of the motivators for him. These kids, he called his son, yeah, he's a brainiac. He's not like me. He's like at Virginia Tech and studying engineering and all this kind of stuff. But when he talked about them, you could just see the pride. And so I was trying to identify in him, what is it that is most meaningful to you? What do you love and most value? And that's what's going to motivate you. And he began to repair his relationship with God and church, right? How can you believe in this God and then all this crap happens in life and in war? I disrupted his narrative. He was in this pattern. I disrupted his narrative and just invited him to think about things a little bit differently. But it was not just me. It was a whole team of providers. And one of the things I always say, because I hear these veterans, you know, Chaplain, I need to get off meth. I need to get off heroin. It's like, I'm all for it. Yes, you do need to get off that stuff. But if you think that that is the problem, you are deluding yourself. I have to speak some truth in love. Do not believe that for a second. We are much more complex than that. From holy disruption to holy resilience. And Joe he's landed. It's not everyone, and it can take some time and a number of tries. He is fully alive. And there was great amazement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Let us extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the truth, not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world. Thank you for being with us today. We hope you can stay for a coffee hour after the service, and that if you'd like to volunteer for coffee hour for a future Sunday, that you contact Cynthia Goodman to volunteer. Is Cynthia here? Cynthia's not here. Well, next Sunday, talk to her. Or use the sign-up sheet by the kitchen. I have a lot of announcements, so be prepared to write stuff down if you need to. I have 7 announcements. 1, the Social Justice Committee is inviting all of us to stay after church today, after coffee hour, Side with Love, by handwriting postcards to registered but infrequent Black voters in North Alabama, encouraging them to vote on November 8th. We want to make an impact, and so we are going to send 250 cards. Many hands made light work. So if you're able to do that after coffee hour, please show up. We will not be telling them for whom to vote or which political party to vote for, but because we don't support as a church a specific political candidate or party, but we do support democracy and human rights and the rights of all who live upon this planet, and we'd like to encourage these people to do the same. 2. Next Sunday, the 30th, if you are going to be wearing a costume for Halloween, you are encouraged to arrive in that costume. I think we'd all love that extra bit of joy during church, wouldn't you? Yeah. I'll be a Jedi Knight. 3, we're looking for backup childcare volunteers to be on call in case our paid childcare people get sick. You can email childcare@hvuuc to help out with that. 4, we're looking for more religious education assistance. If you're new, we'll pair you up with someone who is more experienced so you don't feel nervous. Email dre@hvuuc.org or talk to our Director of Religious Education about these opportunities. Sarah, are you here? Talk to that lady if you'd like. 5, I think I lost count. The United Religious Initiative Gratitude Dinner. The United Religions Initiative Gratitude Dinner will be happening Saturday, November the 12th at 5:30. Main dishes and drinks will be provided, but please also bring a potluck dish. Different religions and beliefs coming together is a very important thing, and it sends a statement to those who are watching. So the more people who come, the louder the statement. Let's get loud, okay? The Saturday after that, November 19th, we are having our auction. Think of what you'd like to donate to the auction to help people raise money. Art, homemade stuff, furniture, a weekend for people to enjoy your cabin in the woods or swimming pool outside. But also, it doesn't have to be a physical item. Your expertise, your time, energy can be donated. Last year, I donated tutoring services, me being a teacher and all. Try and not donate garage sale level stuff because we're trying to make a lot of money for the church. So don't try and auction your $2 knickknacks and a collection of VHSs. That is not the move. In the last 2 years, the auction has been 100% online. This year, there will still be a good online portion, but we will also have our in-person auction on the 19th. Your benediction. Friends, thank you for your witness to all that exists on the margins. Thank you for your commitment to hold yourselves and one another in great and steadfast love. Moving forward from this space, may we continue to nurture spiritual growth. May we continue to travel along the winding pathway to healing from whatever brokenness we individually and collectively hold, knowing that we do not journey this path alone. Our closing hymn for the month of October is hymn number 6, Just As Long As I Have Breath. It is in the gray hymnal, number 6. The contributions that, this is also when we'll be passing out the offering plate. The contributions that you make during the offering supports the way that we build each other up within this community, and also gives us the resources we need to stretch out into the wider world to make a positive impact. If you're making a pledge payment, please mark it as such. And thank you so much for your contributions. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn number 6 in the gray hymnal, Just As Long As I Have Breath.